A recent $30 million FastTrack grant to Starbucks in Tennessee, which that Starbucks is opening an office in Nashville, renewed scrutiny of the state's FastTrack program. And a recent report at thecentersquare.com shows two companies that received previous grants for job creation failed to meet their obligations and are repaying those taxpayer dollars back. Welcome back to the States. I'm Greg Bishop, and let's bring in the Center Square Associate Editor Kim Jarrett with the latest on this story. Kim, we've talked about this program in the past here on the States in regards to Starbucks, but the team digging more into this in the FastTrack program shows it's got some issues. Tell us about the program again and what the state's doing if promises aren't kept by companies that are getting taxpayer funds.
So the reason this story is so important, the money for FastTrack grants comes out of Tennessee's general fund. That general fund comes from sales tax. Tennessee gets most of its money from sales tax because it does not have an income tax. So if you're going to Walmart or whatever grocery store you choose and buying groceries, part of your money is going to fund this program. This program sends money to companies, and in turn, the companies promise to create jobs. So what we've been looking into is what happens if a company does not fulfill its promise. We have found that 71 companies since 2016 did not fulfill their promise. Some of them are in judgments that they are trying to recoup. There are still about $6.1 million in ongoing litigation, and some companies are actually paying the money back. For example, what is happening with Novinix, which is a company in Chattanooga, Tennessee, they are paying back their money. They have already paid $250,000 of the $3 million grant that they received. They're paying the rest of it off in payments, but they do have to pay interest per part of their contract.
Yeah, and you mentioned the overall process here of these clawbacks. I think it's important people see some of the data you guys were able to find here, looking at some documents and talking to officials, these clawbacks. And if people aren't familiar with what a clawback is, as Kim laid out, listen, if you got a program that's saying, hey, we're going to give you some funds if you promise this, well, what happens if you can't fulfill that promise? Well, are those tax dollars just poof, gone in the air? Not so much. In Tennessee, the FastTrack clawbacks, it creates the provisions that if a job creator does not make 90% of the jobs promised, then they have to repay some of that grant, and it's based off of proportion. But, Kim, this is interesting. If they create fewer than 50% of the jobs, they have to repay that entire grant back.
Mm-hmm. Or in the case of Nippon Paint, which also is just paid back its money, they didn't create any of the jobs that they promised. So they did pay back their $1.1 million grant on July 2nd, we were told, by the Department of Economic and Community Development. And that's why we're tracking this money. This is taxpayer money. We have a spreadsheet where we know what money is being clawed back. We filed an open records request for that spreadsheet. Johnny Edwards, who was with our investigative unit at the Center Square, and we compare that with what is online. The Department of Community and Economic Development does have a transparency page. It shows every time there is a FastTrack grant awarded. Now, there is one interesting thing about FastTrack grants. If they're over $750,000, they need approval from the state funding board. But if they're not, they just are able to go through. So we are keeping an eye not only on the ones where there's millions of dollars going through, but some of those smaller grants too.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of the companies, the Nippon Paint, and they are paying back all of their $1.1 million in grants. But 71 companies, Kim, you guys are finding, didn't fulfill their promises since 2016 with that award total of nearly $170 million. And the overall aim was to create 24,000 jobs, but only 7,400 jobs were created. 8 companies had judgments against them. $8.8 million or more of the $10 million owed has been collected, but there's still a lot of dollars that are being tied up because of litigation. Tell us about that.
And that's exactly this in the contract. It says the state can take them to court if they do not fulfill their obligations and they don't willingly pay the money back. The companies are given a deadline. In the case of Novinix, they were given 45 days to pay the money back or make an arrangement with the state, which they did. So there is a vetting process too. It's important to note that the Commissioner of Economic Development, Stuart McWhorter, says, well, we are vetting these companies to make sure that, let's say something happens and they can't create however many jobs that they promise. Well, we vetted these companies in hopes that we know that they will be able to pay this money back.
It's a fascinating story. We hear a lot about, a variety of different dollars going out for different programs and all the questionable fraud that there might be concerning Medicaid dollars. But this being a totally different avenue for proposed job creation and using tax dollars to lure certain companies in, like Starbucks, for instance. $30 million they're looking to get. That is a pretty large chunk of the $169 million that is between 2016 and now of companies that didn't fulfill their promise. How closely are you guys going to be watching that Starbucks grant?
Oh, we have been watching already, almost on a daily basis. We've been talking to lawmakers. This has even become an issue in the gubernatorial race, where we have 3 Republican candidates. They've been asked, what do you think about the FastTrack grants? And we have 2 of the candidates saying they believe it's corporate welfare. The leading candidate, U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn, she said she thinks that the state will recoup the money from Starbucks because these are well-paying jobs that are coming to Nashville. So she says she doesn't have concerns. So everybody is beginning to talk about it. This is not a new issue, but it wasn't until Starbucks received the $30 million that people started talking again.
Just to kind of go through some of these statistics again from 2016, 71 companies not fulfilling their promise. Total awards $169 million, but when you get to what's been collected so far, it's a drop in the bucket, $8.1 million. That's quite a chunk of change. Maybe another area to investigate is the taxpayer cost of actually having to go after and claw back these funds, considering some of these cases are tied up in the courts. But Kim, are these grants needed? It's an interesting question that even Democratic State Representative Afton Bean of Nashville brought up in April, saying that the FastTrack funds should be moved to instead help small businesses in Tennessee. Here she is from the Tennessee floor back in April.
Tennessee clawed back $18.4 million from 17 companies that received over $53.6 million from the FastTrack program. Those companies also failed to deliver over 8,000 jobs. Pure Foods took $1.2 million, promising 273 jobs to a Northeast Tennessee community. It declared bankruptcy within a year and never hired a single person. MIA Seating took $4 million, promising 510 jobs, and delivered 55. Textile Corporation of America took $3 million of our tax dollars, promising over 1,000 jobs in Pikeville. Its owners pleaded guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. The Business Enterprise Resource Office serves small businesses in the state. So if we are serious about economic development, let's put our money where our mouth is.
It's interesting to hear just even more examples, Kim, than what you guys have highlighted in your latest work on this. I think it's an interesting question. Is this something that's even worth it?
Well, we asked that to Representative Ryan Williams in an interview that we did right before our second story published, and he says yes. Why? He says it's because Tennessee doesn't have a state income tax. We got to find a way to kind of increase our tax base, so so we'll have that. Tennessee right now has a $58.3 billion budget. So, hey, if you're not bringing in income taxes, and let's say the sales tax declines, this economic development, well, they believe will help them, have more money for the budget.
Well, it's definitely something we'll keep watching and touch base with you and the team at the Center Square about these FastTrack grants. Kim Jarrett, Associate Editor for the Center Square, greatly appreciate your time joining us here on The States.